Hi boys and girls, and welcome back to another edition of Snack Time with a Dollop of Read Aloud. Today we're going to continue with Chapter 5 of Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone by J.K. Rowling, with permission granted by Scholastic Book Publishing for me to be able to share this book with you. So thanks. Now, when we last left off, our friend Harry, I've taken these from my Lego collection in the back, my china cabinet. So our friend Harry discovered that he is actually a wizard. And he found that out because his friend Hagrid, complete with a pink umbrella, informed him before he finally was able to successfully give Harry the letter that he had been so desperately trying to read. Now that Harry knows that he is going to Hogwarts and that he's actually a wizard because Hagrid, the keeper of the keys, told him, we're going to go to an amazingly magical place. Now, when we muggles go shopping, we either do it on the internet with our phone or we go to a mall. Well, in the wizarding world, there is no such thing as a mall. There is such thing as Diagon Alley. So our chapter 5 is going to be all about Diagon Alley. But I wanted to show you one thing that might help you. Now, if you remember in the last chapter, chapter 4, Uncle Vernon, Mr. Dursley, said he was giving him no money. He was giving no money to Harry to help him get ready for school. And then Hagrid told him, well, you don't need money because your parents have taken care of that. And they're going to go to a place called Gringotts. Now, Gringotts is a bank that is super, super secure because there's all kinds of magical enchantments put on the bank. Now, the bank is run by goblins. Now, here is part of my kids' Diagon Alley set, and this is what my son Peyton actually, this is what Gringotts looks like. And if you look on the balcony, underneath the owls in that window, right above where it says Gringotts Bank, are two goblins watching you, okay? So, today we're going to have an exciting adventure as we slip a little bit more into the world of Harry Potter. So let's go on to Diagon Alley, Chapter 5. And here's just a picture. Okay. Harry woke early the next morning. Although he could tell it was daylight, he kept his eyes shut tight. It was a dream, he told himself firmly. I dreamed a giant called Hagrid came to me to tell me that I was going to a school for wizards. When I open my eyes, I'll still be at home, stuck in the cupboard. There was suddenly a loud tapping noise. And there's Aunt Petunia knocking on the door, Harry thought, his heart sinking, but he still didn't open his eyes. It had been such a good dream. All right, Harry mumbled. I'm getting up. He sat up, and Hagrid's heavy coat fell off of him. The hut was full of sunlight. The storm was over. Hagrid himself was asleep on the collapsed couch, and there was an owl rapping its claw on the window, a newspaper held in its beak. Harry scrambled to his feet, so happy he felt as though a large balloon was swelling inside him. He went straight to the window and jerked it open. The owl swooped in and dropped the newspaper on top of Hagrid, who didn't wake up. The owl then fluttered onto the floor and began to attack Hagrid's coat. Don't do that! Harry tried to wave the owl out of the way, but it snapped its beak fiercely at him and carried on savaging the coat. Hagrid, said Harry loudly, there's an owl. Pay him. Pay him, Hagrid grunted into the sofa. What? He wants paying for delivering the paper. Look in the pockets. Hagrid's coat seemed to be made of nothing but pockets. Bunches of keys, slug pellets, balls of string, peppermint humbugs, tea bags. Finally, Harry pulled out a handful of strange-looking coins from one of the many pockets. Give him 5 Gringotts, said Hagrid sleepily. Gringotts? The little bronze ones. Harry counted out 5 little bronze coins, and the owl held out its leg so Harry could put the money into the small leather pouch tied to it. Then he flew off through the open window. Hagrid yawned loudly, sat up and stretched. Best be off, Harry. Lots to do today. Gotta get you to London and buy all your stuff for school. Harry was turning over the wizard coins and looking back at them. He had just thought of something that made him feel as though the happy balloon inside him would pop. Hagrid. Said Hagrid, who was pulling on his huge boots. I haven't any money. You heard Uncle Vernon last night. He said he wouldn't pay for a single thing that I needed for school. And he certainly isn't going to help me do that to learn magic. Don't worry about that, said Hagrid, standing up and scratching his head. Do you think your parents didn't leave you anything? But if their house was destroyed, they didn't keep their gold in their house, boy. Nah, first stop for us is Gringotts. Gringotts Bank. It's a wizard's bank. Now, have a sausage. They're not bad cold, and I wouldn't say no to a little bit of your cake from last night. Wizards have banks? Just one, Harry. Gringotts, and it's run by goblins. Harry dropped the bit of sausage he was holding. Goblins? Yeah, and so you'd be mad to try and rob it. I'll tell you that. Never mess with goblins, Harry. Gringotts is the safest place in the world for anything you want to keep safe. Well, except maybe Hogwarts. As a matter of fact, I gotta visit Gringotts anyways, for Dumbledore. Hogwarts business. Hagrid drew himself up proudly. He usually gets me to do the important stuff for him. Fetching things, getting things from Gringotts. He knows he can trust me, see? Got everything? Then come on. Harry followed Hagrid onto the rock. The sky was quite clear now, and the sea gleamed in the sunlight. The boat Uncle Vernon had hired was still there, with a lot of water in the bottom from the storm. How'd you get here? Harry asked, looking around for another boat. Flew, said Hagrid. Flew? Asked Harry. Yeah, but we'll go back this way. Not supposed to use magic. Now that I've got you. They settled down in the boat, and Harry, still staring at Hagrid, tried to imagine him flying. Seems a shame to row, though, said Hagrid, giving Harry another one of his sideway looks. If I were to speed things up a bit, would you mind not mentioning this when we get to Hogwarts? Of course not, said Harry, eager to see more magic. Hagrid pulled out the pink umbrella again, tapped it twice on the side of the boat, and they sped off towards land. Why would you be mad to try and rob Gringotts? Harry asked. Spells. Enchantments, said Hagrid, enfolding his newspaper as he spoke. They say there's even a dragon guarding the high-security vaults, and then you gotta find your way. Gringotts is 100 miles under London. See, deep under the underground. You die of hunger trying to get out, even if you manage to get your hands on something. Harry sat and thought about this while Hagrid read his newspaper, The Daily Prophet. Harry had learned from Uncle Vernon that people liked to be left alone while they did this, but it was very difficult. He had never had so many questions in all of his life. Ministry of Magic messing things up as usual, Hagrid muttered, turning the page. There's a Ministry of Magic? Harry asked, before he could stop himself. Course! They wanted Dumbledore for minister, of course, but he would never leave Hogwarts. So old Cornelius Fudge got the job. Bungler if I ever saw one. So he pelts Dumbledore with owls every morning asking for advice. But what does the Ministry of Magic do? Well, their main job is to keep it from the Muggles. That's still witches and wizards up and down the country. Why? Why? Blimey, Harry. Everyone be wanting magic solutions to their problems. Nah, we're best if we're left alone. At this moment, the boat bumped gently into the harbor wall. Hagrid folded his newspaper and they clambered up the stone steps onto the street. Passers-by stared a lot at Hagrid as they walked through the little town to the station. Harry couldn't blame them. Not only was Hagrid twice as tall as anyone he had ever known, he kept pointing at perfectly ordinary things like parking meters and saying loudly, "See that, Harry? These muggles dream up, eh?" "Hagrid," said Harry, panting a bit as he had to run to keep up. "Did you say there's dragons at Gringotts?" "Well, so they say," said Hagrid. "Crikey, I'd like me a dragon." "You'd like one?" "Wanted one ever since I was a kid." "Here we go." They reached the station. There was a train to London in 5 minutes. Hagrid didn't understand Muggle money, as he called it, and gave bills to Harry so that he could pay for the tickets. People stared more than ever on the train. Hagrid took up 2 seats and sat knitting what looked like a canary yellow circus tent. "Still got your letter, Harry?" he asked as he counted stitches. Harry took the parchment envelope out of his pocket. "Good," said Hagrid. "There's a list of everything you'll need to get." Harry unfolded the second piece of paper. He hadn't noticed it the night before, and read, "Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Uniform. First-year students will require 1. 3 sets of plain work robes, black. 1 pointed hat, black for day wear. 3. 1 pair of protective gloves, dragon hide or similar. 4. 1 winter cloak, black with silver fastenings. Please note that all pupils' clothes should carry name tags. Course books. All students should have a copy of each of the following: Standard Book of Spells, Grade 1 by Miranda Goshawk. A History of Magic by Bathilda Bagshot. Magical Theory by Adalbert Waffling. A Beginner Guide to Transfiguration by Emmerich Switch. 1000 Magical Herbs and Fungi by Phil de Spoor. Magical Drafts and Potion by Arsenius Jigger. And Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them by Newt Scamander. The Dark Forces, A Guide to Self-Protection by Quentin Trimble. Other equipment needed: 1 wand, 1 cauldron, pewter, standard size, 2. 1 telescope, 1 set of glass or crystal phials, and 1 set of brass scales. Students may also bring an owl, or a cat, or a toad, but not all of them. Parents are reminded that first years are not allowed to own their own broomstick. "Can we buy all of this in London?" Harry asked. "If you know where to go," Hagrid replied. Harry had never been to London before, although Hagrid seemed to know where he was going. He was obviously not used to getting there in an ordinary way. He got stuck in the ticket barrier on the underground and complained loudly that the seats were too small and that the train was too slow. "I don't know how Muggles manage without magic," he said as they climbed a broken-down escalator that led up to a bustling road lined with shops. Hagrid was so huge that he parted the crowd easily. All Harry had to do was keep close behind him. They passed bookshops and music stores, hamburger restaurants, and cinemas, but nowhere that looked as if it could sell a magic wand. This was just an ordinary street full of ordinary people. Could there really be piles of wizard's gold buried beneath them? Were there really shops that sold spellbooks and broomsticks? Might this not all be some huge joke that the Dursleys had cooked up? If Harry hadn't known that the Dursleys had no sense of humor, he might have thought so. Yet somehow, even though everything Hagrid had told him so far was unbelievable, Harry couldn't help but trust. "This is it," said Hagrid, coming to a halt. "The Leaky Cauldron. It's a famous place." It was a tiny, grubbly-looking pub. If Hagrid hadn't pointed to it, Harry wouldn't have noticed it was even there. The people hurrying by didn't glance at it. Their eyes slid from the big bookshop on one side to the record shop on the other, as if they couldn't see the Leaky Cauldron at all. In fact, Harry had the most peculiar feeling that only he and Hagrid could see it. Before he could mention this, Hagrid had steered him inside. For a famous place, it was dark and shabby. A few old women were sitting in a corner drinking a tiny glass of sherry. One of them was smoking a long pipe. A little man in a top hat was walking to the old bartender, who was quite bald and looked like a toothless walnut. The low buzz of chatter stopped when they walked in. Everyone seemed to know Hagrid. They waved and smiled at him, and the bartender reached for a glass, saying, "The usual, Hagrid?" "Can't, Tom. I'm on Hogwarts business," said Hagrid, clapping his great hand on Harry's shoulder and making Harry's knees buckle. "Good Lord," said the bartender, peering at Harry. "Is this? No. Can this be?" The leaky cauldron had suddenly gone completely still and absolutely silent. "Bless my soul," whispered the old bartender. "Harry Potter! What an honor!" He hurried out from behind the bar, rushed towards Harry, and seized his hands, tears in his eyes. "Welcome back, Mr. Potter. Welcome back." Harry didn't know what to say. Everyone was looking at him. The old woman with the pipe was puffing without realizing that it had gone out. Hagrid was beaming. Then there was a great scraping of chairs, and the next moment Harry found himself shaking hands with everyone in the leaky cauldron. "Doris Crockford, Mr. Potter, can't believe I'm meeting you at last." "So proud, Mr. Potter. I'm just so proud." "Always wanted to shake your hand. This has me in a flutter." "Delighted, Mr. Potter. Just can't tell you. Diggle's the name. Daedalus Diggle." "I've seen you before," said Harry, as Daedalus Diggle's top hat fell off almost in excitement. "You bowed to me once in a shop." "He remembers!" cried Daedalus Diggle, looking around at everyone. "Did you hear that? He remembers me." Harry shook hands again. Doris Crockford kept coming back for one more. A pale young man made his way forward, very nervously. One of his eyes was twitching. "Professor Quirrell," said Hagrid. "Harry, Professor Quirrell will be one of your professors at Hogwarts." "Potter," stammered Professor Quirrell, grasping Harry's hand. "Can't tell you how pleased I am to meet you." "Well, what sort of magic do you teach, Professor Quirrell?" "Defense against the dark arts," muttered Professor Quirrell, as though he'd rather not think about it. "Not that you will need it." Potter?" He laughed nervously. "You'll be getting all of your equipment, I suppose. I've got to pick up a new book on vampires myself." He looked terrified at the very thought. But the others wouldn't let Professor Quirrell keep Harry to himself. It took almost 10 minutes to get away from them all. At last, Hagrid managed to make himself heard over the babble. "Must get on. Lots to buy. Come on, Harry." Doris Crockford shook Harry's hand one last time, and Hagrid led them through the bar and out into a small walled courtyard, where there was nothing but a trash can and a few weeds. Hagrid grinned at Harry. "Told you, didn't I? Told you were famous? Even Professor Quirrell was trembling just to meet you. Mind you, he's usually trembling." "Is he always that nervous?" "Oh, yeah, poor bloke. Brilliant mind. He was fine while he was studying out of books, but then he took a year off to get some first-hand experience. They say he ran into vampires in the Black Forest, and they are a nasty bit of trouble with a hag. Never been the same since. Scared of the students, scared of his own subject. Now, where's me umbrella? Vampires? Hags?" Harry's head was swimming. Hagrid, meanwhile, was counting bricks in a wall above the trash can. 3 up, 2 across. "Right. Stand back, Harry." He tapped the wall 3 times with the point of his umbrella. The brick he had touched quivered, and it wriggled. In the middle, a small hole appeared. It grew wider and wider. A second later, they were facing an archway large enough for even Hagrid, an archway onto a cobbled street that twisted and turned out of sight. "Welcome," said Hagrid, "to Diagon Alley." He grinned at Harry's amazement. They stepped through the archway. Harry looked quickly over his shoulder and saw that the archway shrank instantly back into the solid wall. The sun shone brightly on a stack of cauldrons outside the nearest shop. Cauldrons all sizes, copper, brass, pewter, silver, self-stirring, collapsible, and a sign hanging above them. You'll be needing one of those, said Hagrid, but we gotta get your money first. Harry wished he had about 8 more eyes. He turned his head in every direction as they walked up the street, trying to look at everything at once. The shops, the things outside them, the people doing their shopping. A plump woman outside the apothecary was shaking her head as they passed, saying, "Dragon's liver, 17 sickles an ounce. They're mad." A low, soft hooting came from the dark shop with a sign saying Elop's Al Emporium. Tawny, Screech, Barn, Brown, Snowy, several boys of about Harry's age had their noses pressed against a window with a broomstick in it. "Look," Harry heard one of them say, "it's the Nimbus 2000. Fastest ever." There were shops selling robes, shops selling telescopes and strange silver instruments Harry had never seen before. Windows stacked with barrels of bat spleens and eel eyes, tottering piles of spell books, quills and rolls of parchment, potion bottles, globes of the moon. Gringotts, Harry said. They had reached a snowy white building that towered over the other little shops. Standing beside its burnished bronze doors, wearing a uniform of scarlet and gold, was, "Yeah, Harry, that's a goblin," said Hagrid quietly as they walked up to the white stone steps straight ahead of them. The goblin was about a head shorter than Harry. He had a swarthy, clever face and a pointed beard, and Harry noticed very long fingers and feet. He bowed as they walked inside. Now they were facing a second pair of doors, silver this time, with the words engraved upon them. "Enter, stranger, but take heed of what awaits the sin of greed. For those who take but do not earn must pay most dearly in their turn. So if you seek beneath our floors a treasure that was never yours, thief, you have been warned, beware of finding more than treasure there." "Like I'd say, you'd be mad to rob a goblin," said Hagrid. A pair of goblins bowed them through the silver doors, and they were in their vast marble hall. About 100 more goblins were sitting on high stools behind a long counter, scribbling in large ledgers, weighing coins in brass scales, examining precious stones through eyeglasses. There were too many doors to count leading off the hall, and yet more goblins were showing people in and out of these. Hagrid and Harry made for the counter. "Morning," said Hagrid to a free goblin. "We've come to take some money out of Mr. Potter's safe." "You have a key, sir?" "Got it right here, somewhere," said Hagrid as he started emptying his pockets onto the counter, scattering a handful of moldy dog biscuits over the goblin's book of numbers. The goblin wrinkled his nose, and Harry watched the goblin on his right weighing a pile of rubies as big as glowing coals. "Got it," said Hagrid at last, holding up the tiny golden key. The goblin looked at it closely. "That seems to be in order. And I've got a letter here from Professor Dumbledore. It's about you-know-what in Vault 713. The goblin read the letter carefully. "Very well," he said, handing it back to Hagrid. "I will have someone take you down to both vaults." "Griphook!" Griphook was yet another goblin. Once Hagrid had crammed all the dog biscuits back into his pocket. He and Harry followed Griphook towards one of the doors leading off the hall. "What's the you-know-what in Vault 713? Harry asked. "Can't tell you," said Hagrid mysteriously. "Very secret. Hogwarts business. Dumbledore trusted me. More'n my job's worth to tell you that." Griphook held the door open for them. Harry, who had expected more marble, was surprised. They were in a narrow stone passageway lit with flaming torches. It sloped deeply downward, and there were little railway tracks on the floor. Griphook whistled, and a small cart came hurtling up the tracks towards them. They climbed in, Hagrid with some difficulty, and then they were off. At first, they just hurtled through a maze of twisting passages. Harry tried to remember left, right, left, middle fork, right, left, but it was impossible. The rattling cart seemed to know its own way because Griphook wasn't steering. Harry's eyes stung as the cold air pushed past them, but he kept them wide open. Once he thought he saw a burst of fire at the end of the passage and twisted around to see if it was a dragon, but too late. They plunged even deeper, passing an underground lake where large stalactites and huge stalagmites grew from the ceiling and the floor. "I never know," Harry called to Hagrid over the noise of the cart. "What's the difference between a stalagmite and a stalactite?" "Stalagmite's got an M in it," said Hagrid. "And don't ask me questions right now. I'm gonna be sick." He did look very green. When the cart stopped at last by a small door in the passageway, Hagrid got out and had to lean against the wall to stop his knees from trembling. Griphook unlocked the door. A lot of green smoke came billowing out as it cleared. Harry gasped. Inside were mounds and mounds of gold coins, columns of silver, heaps of brown knuts. "All yours," smiled Hagrid. All Harry's. It was incredible. The Dursleys couldn't have known about this, or they'd have had it from him faster than blinking. How often had they complained about how much money Harry had cost them? All that time there had been a small fortune belonging to him buried deep underneath London. Hagrid helped Harry pile some of it into a bag. "The gold ones are galleons," he explained. 17 sickles or silver sickles to 1 galleon, and 25 knuts to a sickle. It's easy to remember. Right, that should be enough for a couple of terms. We'll keep the rest of it safe. Vault 713 now, please. Can we go a little bit more slowly if possible?" he asked. "Only one speed," said Griphook. They were going even deeper now and gathering speed. The air became colder and colder as they hurtled round tight corners. They went rattling over an underground ravine, and Harry leaned over the side to try and see what was down at the dark bottom. But Hagrid groaned and pulled him back by the scruff of his neck. Vault 713 had no keyhole. "Stand back," said Griphook importantly. He stroked the door gently with one of his long fingers, and it simply melted away. If anyone but a Gringotts goblin tried that, they'd be sucked through the door and trapped in there. "How often do you check to see if anyone's inside?" Hagrid asked. "Once about every 10 years, with a rather nasty grin. Something's really extraordinary had to be inside this top security vault. Hagrid was sure, Harry was sure, and he leaned forward eagerly, expecting to see fabulous jewels at the very least. But at first he thought it was empty. Then he noticed a grubby little package wrapped up in brown paper lying on the floor. Hagrid picked it up and tucked it deep inside his coat. Harry longed to know what it was, but knew better than to ask. "Come on, back into this infernal cart, and don't talk to me on the way back. It's best if I keep me mouth shut," said Hagrid. One wild cart ride later, they stood blinking in the sunlight outside Gringotts. Harry didn't know where to run first now that he had a bag full of money. He didn't know how many galleons there were to a pound to know that he was holding more money than he had ever had in his entire life. More money than even Dudley had ever had. "Might as well get your uniform," said Hagrid, nodding towards Madame Malfin's robes for all occasions. "Listen, Harry, would you mind if I slipped off for a pick-me-up in Leaky Cauldron? I hate them Gringotts carts." He did look a little sick, so Harry entered Madame Malfin's shop alone, feeling nervous. Madame Malkin was the squat, smiling witch, dressed in all mauve. "Hogwarts, dear," she said when Harry started to speak. "Got a lot here. Another young man being fitted right now, in fact." In the back of the shop, a boy with a pale, pointed face was standing on a footstool, while a second witch pinned up his long black robes. Madame Malkin stood Harry on a stool next to him, slipped a long robe over his head, and began to pin it to the right length. "Hello," said the boy. "Hogwarts too?" "Yes," said Harry. "My father's next door buying my books, and my mother's up the street looking at wands," said the boy. He had a bored, drawling look. "Then I'm going to drag them off to look at racing brooms. I don't see why first years can't have their own. I think I'll bully father into getting me one, and I'll smuggle it in somehow. Harry was strongly reminded of Dudley. Have you got your own broom? The boy went on. No, said Harry. Play Quidditch at all? No, Harry said, wondering what on earth Quidditch could be. I do. Father says it's a crime if I'm not picked to play for my house. I must say I agree. Know what house you'll be in? No, said Harry, feeling more stupid by the minute. Well, no one really knows until they get there, do they? But I know I'll be in Slytherin. All our family have been. Imagine being in Hufflepuff. I think I'd leave, don't you? Said Harry, wishing he could say something a bit more interesting. I say, look at that man, said the boy suddenly, nodding towards the front window. Hagrid was standing there, grinning at Harry and pointing at 2 large ice creams to show he couldn't come in. That's Hagrid, said Harry, pleased to know something the boy didn't. He works at Hogwarts. Oh, said the boy, I've heard of him. He's a servant, isn't he? He's the gamekeeper, said Harry. He was liking the boy less and less by every second. Yes, exactly what I heard. He's some sort of savage. He lives in a hut on the school grounds, and every now and then he gets drunk, tries to do magic, and ends up setting fire to his bed. I think he's brilliant, said Harry coldly. Do you? Said the boy with a slight sneer. Why is he with you? Where are your parents? They're dead, said Harry shortly. He didn't feel much like going into matters with this boy. Oh, sorry, said the other, not really sounding sorry at all. But they were our kind, weren't they? They were a witch and a wizard, if that's what you mean. I really don't think they should let others sort in, do you? They're just not the same. They've never been brought up to know our ways. Some of them have never even heard of Hogwarts until they get the letter. Can you imagine? I think they should keep it in only old wizarding families. What's your surname, by the way? But before Harry could answer, Madame Malkin said, That's you done, my dear, said Harry. And Harry, not sorry for an excuse to stop talking to the boy, hopped from the stool and left. Well, I'll see you around Hogwarts, I suppose, said the drawling boy. Harry was rather quite quiet as he ate the ice cream Hagrid had bought him. Chocolate and raspberry with chopped nuts. What's up? Said Hagrid. Nothing, Harry lied. They stopped to buy parchment and quills, and Harry cheered up a bit when he found a bottle of ink that changed color as he wrote. Hagrid, what's Quidditch? Blimey, Harry, I keep forgetting how little you know. Not knowing about Quidditch. Don't make me feel worse, said Harry. He told Hagrid about the pale boy and Madame Malkin's. And he said people from Muggle families shouldn't be allowed in. You're not a Muggle, or you're not from a Muggle family. If he had known who you were, he'd have grown up knowing your name. If his parents were wizarding folk, you saw that everyone in the Leaky Cauldron was like when they saw you. Anyways, what does he know about it? Some of the best wizards I've ever met were the only ones with magic in them in a long line of muggles. Look at your mom. Look at what she had for a sister. So, what is Quidditch? It's our sport. It's wizard sport. It's like soccer in the muggle world. Everyone follows Quidditch. Played up in the air on broomsticks, and there are 4 balls. Sort of hard to explain all the rules. And what's Slytherin and Hufflepuff? All right, so I think, boys and girls, this is getting pretty long. And this chapter is actually, I still have more pages. So we'll stop chapter 5 here. And we'll pick up chapter 5 on Monday. But as you can see, Harry's starting to encounter questions that he doesn't have answers to. And I have to wonder, even though he's really excited to be in Diagon Alley and to have gone to that really cool bank with the roller coaster underneath where he had to go to the different vaults at Gringotts, I have to wonder how he's feeling. Because for me, I know how I would feel if I was put in a situation where I didn't know the name of things. I didn't know the kind of money. I didn't know the rules, how to dress, the things I needed. I imagine it would be a lot like if you moved to another country and you had to learn all the culture in a new country. So I want you to think about how Harry's feeling, how he might be what they call conflicted, which means he feels one way and then he feels the other. So he might be excited and happy one way, but he might be feeling something else. So what I'd like you to do is just think about how Harry's feeling, and we'll pick up the rest of chapter 5 on Monday. All right? So I hope to see you at our class share today at 11, and I miss you. I love you. Stay safe. Bye.